I thought my hatred for Rico was bad in the Foxhole Court, but after the Sunshine Court, I would happily resurrect that man just to make him suffer a fate worse than death. Hello everybody, it is Katie here, and for those of you who know even the slightest thing about me, you will know that I am balls out obsessed with All for the Game. Those books have had me in an iron grip since I first picked them up in 2016. I have remained completely in love with the series ever since. It's one of the most important series I've ever read in my life. Objectively, those first three books, they're not amazing in terms of writing. It is a self-published trilogy, but they remain the best books I have ever read. Nora draws me in like no traditionally published author has ever been able to before. But after finishing the trilogy, reading Nora's extra content, knowing that she said she didn't want to return to that world, I didn't have a single hope of any sort of continuation. So imagine my surprise! So I got my sister to read the books in 2019, and ever since then she has been a Jean and Jeremy truther. She absolutely adored the pair of them, and while she always ships them, I'd be sitting on the outside like, I'm not even gonna let myself ship them because I know that there's absolutely no future there. I didn't want to attach myself to the idea of them when Jeremy was barely in that trilogy, and I knew that I just want more content for him and that was never gonna happen. So yeah, I just stayed on the outside of the Jean and Jeremy shippers. I just appreciate art of them from afar. I never let myself read any fics or just delve too deep. So in November, when Nora started posting songs that fit Jean as a character, and then she posted one for Jeremy, I was shitting myself. And then Nora was putting the acronym in her bio and we were all losing our mind. Like, no, she wouldn't possibly return to this world, right? Right? But then she did. I was so in disbelief at the announcement of the Sunshine Court that I don't think it really hit me that it was a real thing until a few weeks ago. All for the Game was just one of those trilogies that I thought that was it was done and dusted. There was never going to be anything else. And now all of a sudden, Nora was going to write about Jean. And he deserved a story so fucking much after everything that he went through in those damn books, and now he was finally getting his story and we were gonna read it. And not only that, but Jeremy was getting a point of view in the book. Jeremy Knox, who we barely knew anything about and had just come up with headcanons about for years. The levels of insanity that I have reached since this announcement was made. I have the book here on my Kindle. I've read it in its entirety, and there's still part of me that is like, there's no way this is real. But it is real, and we're gonna talk about it as best we can because my mind is still bamboozled. So if you haven't yet read The Sunshine Court, I'm gonna be real honest, I'm not gonna do a spoiler-free review because I don't think that I can. I'm literally just gonna jump right into talking about it. How do you even review something that you love so damn much? Something that has literally carved a little place to live in your heart. You can't possibly review something like that. So this isn't really a review, this is just me losing my shit for however many minutes my camera will allow me to film. So let's start with Jean because, you know, he is our main character this time around. Someone who isn't Neil Jostin narrating the events. So we knew that he went through shit in the nest and that he had bags and bags of trauma from what we saw of him through Neil and what we learned about him from Kevin. But with half of this book being from his point of view, we really got to understand his story this time around. I need to start by saying that I'm just obsessed with the fact that we got to see the foxes through the eyes of somebody who isn't Neil. And it's just so crazy to me after only having Neil's perspective on things for this whole time. Neil through Jean's eyes is absolutely hilarious. The things that he calls him throughout the book. Abominable cockroach was one. And you realise how batshit crazy he looks to somebody who isn't himself. And Andrew was just Neil's creepy little sidekick. I would say it's refreshing to read a book through the eyes of somebody who's not obsessed with Kevin Day, but that doesn't apply to this one because Jean is also obsessed with Kevin Day a little bit. There is a lot to unpack, and I think we've only seen the tip of the iceberg, but I really enjoyed getting to see them interact a little bit more than what we did in the Foxhole Court, especially when Jean was recovering at Abby's place and Kevin came to visit him. But you can tell that Jean has such conflicting thoughts on Kevin because he hates him for leaving him in the way he did, and in his defense I would too, but I still believe that Kevin was in the right to get out of there when he did. As much as it had a horrible effect on Jean, I don't blame Kevin for that. But then you can also tell that Jean was closest to Kevin in the Ravens, and they had a complicated relationship. I don't know whether Jean had romantic feelings towards Kevin. I feel like he did. He was speaking about getting drawn in by pretty faces and backstabbed by them when he was discussing how Renee took him from the nest, and since we know that he did have feelings for Renee, I take it to mean that he also had feelings for Kevin. Whether Kevin had them back for Jean is something that we don't know yet and might never know, but I just loved getting to see more of their dynamic in this book. Obviously the main focus in this story is Jean transferring to USC and trying to come to terms with everything that's happened to him whilst being in a completely different situation than he's been used to whilst playing Exy this whole time. Having to read about the things that happened to him in the nest was so fucking heartbreaking. Like, we knew that he went through shit because Rico is fucked up and the rest of the Ravens are also fucked up from the way that they've been trained, but just hearing more about it and hearing the things that Jean had to endure, I didn't think it was possible for me to hate somebody as much as Rico, but Grayson is fucking getting there. Every time I read about this man, I was like, he needs to die. Little did I know that my boy Neil was going to come in at the very last second and order a hit on him, but we'll talk about that later. But what I appreciated is the way in which we're dealing with his trauma is very different to how Neil did. There's a lot of similarities between Jean and Neil. Both of them were very closed off and unwilling to let other people help them. Both of them immediately hated poor Betsy on sight, but with Jean it's different because of Jeremy. So let's get into Jeremy, shall we? Because with Jean, we knew kind of what his story was going to be like. We had expectations. You could predict what sort of things he was going to go through in this book. But with Jeremy was a blank page. We genuinely knew nothing about Jeremy other than the fact that his team don't resort to violence, they're positive and upbeat, and that Kevin was absolutely obsessed with him. We didn't even know, really, going into the Sunshine Court, whether this was going to be a Jean and Jeremy relationship. We knew nothing about Jeremy's personality, his backstory. So for me, he was one of the most exciting aspects of this book. And I am so happy that it was split POV, because having Jeremy's perspective on everything was so interesting, because for once it is somebody that has absolutely no association to the events of the Foxhole Court. He doesn't know about the Moriyamas, he doesn't know the truth about Rico. He's just outside of all of that. And him and the rest of his team know nothing truly about the nest. It's all just rumours. There are rumours of it being a cult, there are rumours about how they're trained and raised, but overall, he really didn't know anything. So I loved getting to see his reaction to Jean and finding out what they truly go through at the Ravens. I just love him so much. He is so cute and everything I wanted him to be and more. We absolutely needed Jeremy in this story. We needed a fresh pair of eyes. I won't say we needed somebody who's not traumatized, because, you know, there's hints about Jeremy's backstory that we don't know yet, and there's definitely something going on with his family and his past, so I'm sure we'll find out more about him in the second book, but he still hasn't experienced anything close to what Jean is going through. And we see that when Jean lies to him and says that his scars are from his father, Jeremy has a moment where he thinks that he can't imagine being abused by his parents. That's how far removed he is from people like Jean and Neil. But that also meant that we got to see how somebody outside of that tries to help. His reaction to Jean and how he helped try and ground him every time you could tell that he was having panic attacks over his trauma and stuff was just so wholesome. And it's exactly what Jean needs. Another thing that Jeremy is as well is that he's so selfless. When he finds out about the partner system that the Ravens had, because Kevin tells him, he immediately tells Jean that he'll be his partner so that Jean feels more comfortable. He sits in on some of his classes. Not only Jeremy, but Kat and Lila as well. Can we talk about Kat and Lila, because I just love them so much. Of all the expectations and theories I was coming up with regards to Jeremy when we found out that this book was happening, him being the leader of a little queer friendship group was not one of them. But I'm absolutely obsessed. So although Jeremy lives at home, he spends a lot of his time living with Kat and Layla, who are girlfriends. So the three of them are a little close-knit group within the Trojans, and Jean just kind of gets thrown into that. He's not prepared for them, and they are certainly not prepared for him. But just everything about the way they treated him throughout this book was just so perfect. The way Kat got him involved in cooking, and it gave Jean something to distract him from everything, and he grows to enjoy it throughout the book. The way they have their little house set up, and the cardboard dog. Bark, bark! If I wasn't in love with Jeremy before then, that was the moment that just absolutely got me. His little cardboard dog, and the fact that he kept putting it in John's room to watch over him. A roommate in my absence. You expect me to just carry on? Go about my day? After receiving this information? There are so many scenes between them that I just absolutely adored, and I can't possibly list them. But Kat taking Jean on a drive on her motorcycle, number one, she's hot. Number two, she's just so cute with him. This was everything that Jean needed, because it's people that are so completely different from the people he was raised with. And if anyone can help him see a different perspective on life, it's them. Just the Trojans in general was such an unexpected joy, except for Lucas. When he took Jean out to talk and suddenly Grayson was there. I'm never forgiving Lucas for that. But anyway, we don't really get to see like all of the Trojans because there's like 29 of them, I think. That's just too many. So instead Nora focuses on a select group of them, mainly Jeremy's friendship group. I absolutely love the representation that we got within that group. We have a non-binary character, a trans character. There is a space there for them to be openly queer and not have it matter, which again is something I think Jean really needs. It was nice to see a team that was just so different from the Foxes and the Ravens. You know, they genuinely play Xe for fun, and hopefully that will help Jean fall in love with playing Xe again, like as an actual game, not as something that he has to do and do perfectly. You know, he's a very different sort of person to what the Trojans are used to on their team, but they absolutely try their best with him, especially the coaches as well. What is heartbreaking though is whenever they treat Jean with kindness, he always just thinks there's an ulterior motive, or he's waiting for somebody to lash out at him, and I cried so many times throughout this book. But hopefully through them he will start realising that they don't have any motives, that they just want to help him, play Xe with him, coach him. There's literally so much to talk about that I'm just forgetting everything that I want to talk about and I'm waffling on instead. But I do have to mention Neil, obviously. Like I said before, I loved getting to see Neil from somebody else's point of view. When we were approaching the end of the book, I was sitting there like, how the hell is this going to end? Because I had no idea. I thought maybe it'd end with the press conference that they're planning with Kevin and Jean, but other than that, I was so unsure. And then Neil showed up. It's never going to be a good time when Neil shows up, is it? In California, of all places. So yeah, when Jean got that message that Neil was I panicked. And I had a right to panic, because that scene was as awful as it was amazing. With them being unable to tell the truth about Rico and the Moriamas, they have to spin the story in a way that looks real. So they decide to pin things on John's family, which he is more than happy to do once Stuart tells him that his sister's dead. I was so hoping she would be alive because he deserves to have just one fucking good thing happen, and I was hoping that that was going to be finding out that his sister was alive, but no. There's still part of me that is like, maybe she is actually alive and that Stuart's only saying this to get Jean to talk to the FBI about his family, but who knows. But as heartbreaking and as awful as that scene was, Neil was everything that he needed to be in that moment. He showed up, realised what had happened to Jean when Jean brought Drake up, ordered a hit in the same breath as he ordered his tea, gave attitude to the FBI, told Jean he deserved saving, and then left. I love him so much, and I have missed him so much, and I'm so happy that I get to have more Neil. So before I try and wrap this up, we'll quickly talk about Jeremy and Jean. There is attraction there, mutually. Jean saying you like men, and Jeremy replying with more exclusively than you, I assume, was the funniest thing. That absolutely cracked me up. But obviously there is something there between them, and I can't wait to see that develop more. I'm just so excited for this second book now, and I don't know how I'm supposed to wait. I'm going insane. But what I loved the most was the very end of the story, when Jeremy was trying to ask Jean what he can do to help, and Jean told him that he can't change his past. He can't help him with what happened to him in the nest. All he can do is be there for him in the future. And that was so fucking important, because it's so true. There are so many books I've read where a love interest or a best friend enters the story and that's used as a fix-all. Like, that one person can come into your life and just fix everything bad that's happened to you when they can't. So having that conversation between them was just so special. Just the end of the story in general, when Jean added friends to his list of things to live for. And the fact that he goes into the kitchen because he wants to eat. I will cry again. It was such a gorgeous ending to the book. I'm blown away with how much I loved this story. Because, you know, I won't lie, obviously part of me was worried. It's been so long since we had the All for the Game trilogy. I didn't know how much I was going to love this story. I was scared about how different it would be, what type of character Jeremy was. I did have worries about it, and none of that mattered in the end because I did love it as much as the Foxhole Court. I flew through the book in 2 days. I could not stop reading. And even though it's set in the same world, it's still about Exie, it's still about the same characters, it's so different. There is trauma, there is heartbreaking moments, I did cry, but I also laughed so much as well because there were so many funny scenes. It's heartwarming and hopeful, and it's everything it needed to be for a Jean story because he deserves to recover and enjoy life. And I'm just so grateful that we're going to see that. Nora Sakavik, I owe you my life. So yeah, I'm still bamboozled that we got this book in the first place, but I need to stop talking now and make myself a cup of tea and cry some more and impatiently wait for the next book whenever that arrives. But please do let me know all of your thoughts on the Sunshine Core down in the comments. Did it live up to your expectations? I really hope it did. And what do you want to happen next? I am as excited as I am terrified for whatever lies ahead. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!